is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Donna, you there?
Yes, apparently we're live.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we will just start off with a little brief introduction, and I'm going to do my little intro. So hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, April 30th. The Developmental Disabilities Administration welcomes you to the DDA Educational Series webinar. Today's topic is Behavior Support Services, and before we begin, I'd like to go over a few things about the webinar. This webinar is open to all stakeholders and will be recorded and put on the DDA website. All participants will be in listen-only mode. There are two options for listening to the webinar, by computer and by phone, and if you have trouble hearing, you may try switching modes by clicking on the appropriate button on the webinar panel. There are handouts for the webinar, which you can find in the handout section, and they can also be emailed. To me, actually, donna.will@maryland.gov. We will be recording today's webinar. If requested, we will send a link in a follow-up email. Questions can be typed in the question box, which is in the webinar panel. They will be read and answered out loud, as long as they relate to the topic of behavior support services. So today we have the Director of Clinical Services, Dr. Meg DePasquale, who will be joining us shortly. We're going to do a few things to allow you to see the presentation. Dr. DePasquale, I have sent you an invitation to share your screen. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, great. So we have a PowerPoint for everyone. She's going to bring that up in just a second. And if we have any technical difficulties, we can always switch over. So I am going to, did you see the share screen? Or would it be worked out better for me to run the webinar, run the, the PowerPoint?
Show screen. How about that? Does that work?
Yep, that looks great.
Okay. Okay. All right, let me click out of this little box here. Hold on. I'm using my laptop, which is a very touch-sensitive screen. I apologize. Whoops. I'm trying to get it to from the beginning. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's almost 12. My name is Dr. Meg DePasquale, as Donna just stated, and I am the Director of Clinical Services. Welcome you all to this webinar. Today, our agenda is that we'll do the brief overview that many of you have been on these calls. You've probably have heard this information before, but then we will go into behavior support services. We'll talk about all the different services, the training, etc., and then open it up for any questions that anybody might have. So as you all know, like I said, especially if you've been on this call before, this is our 7th, I believe, webinar, and so we here at DDA believe that all people have the right to live, love, work, learn, play, and pursue their life aspirations within the community. We partner with people with developmental disabilities and their families to provide support and resources to live fulfilling lives. DDA provides a coordinated service delivery system to enable children and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to work towards self-determination, interdependence, productivity, integration, and inclusion in all facets of community life across the lifespan. We are one of many resources within the state, services and supports available to assist individuals and families as they build their lives towards their vision of what is the good life. And why won't it go over? Hold on. I apologize for whatever reason it's not wanting to, hold on. There we go. Oops. DDA supports children, families, and adults Remember, the trajectory to a good life is that it's really based off what that individual and their support feel is, and their, what's going to make them feel happy and feel as though that they are living that good life. Is it being employed, having community involvement, having their own apartment, taking a vacation? It's all those different areas that are important to that individual. And there's a lot of different ways of getting that through the technologies that we have, community resources, eligibility-specific supports, the relationships that they have with their family, their community, the people that they work with, as well as their personal strengths and assets, and identifying what those are to be able to develop what that good life is going to look like for that individual. Our regional offices, there are 4 of them, depending on which county you live in, would depend on which region you would go to. Our central region is Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Hartford County, and Howard County, and the direct line is on that slide. If you have questions, you can definitely just call that regional office. The Eastern Shore counties are Caroline, Cecil, Dorchester, Kent, Queen Anne, Somerset, Talbot, Wycomico, and Worcester counties, and the number is there as well. Southern is Calvert, Charles, Montgomery, Prince George's, and St. Mary's County. And then our western region is Allegheny, Carroll, Frederick, Garrett, and Washington counties. So now we're going to go into behavior support services, what they are, and what those services entail. So when we think of behavioral supports, we look at it in a 3-tier model. That we start with tier 1, which is a universal support that's used by everybody. And these are proactive and preventative strategies or teaching-based strategies that are used on a consistent basis and are done continuously all the time. Some of those ideas of universal would be offering choices, ensuring positive interactions are occurring on a regular basis, setting expectations for those individuals, using schedules, providing that consistency, and reinforcing positive behaviors. Then we have our tier 2, which are specialized, and they're used by some individuals. And those are really focused teaching strategies, and that's when there's a specific skill deficit that is causing a behavior that might be at a specific time or during a specific location. So it may be when they're in the community, or whether it be at school or at the work site. And what they are is they are specific. For example, an example would be coping skills being taught to improve their interactions with maybe their roommate when they're having a disagreement. And then tier 3 is our intensive support services, and they're used by few. And these are really the crux of the behavior support services really go into. And this is when a behavior is causing a significant risk for harm, such as maybe limiting their access to the community because of their behaviors, or police has become involved, or hospitalization if they're causing some kind of dangerous, unsafe behaviors. So what services are available with behavior support services? We have an array of services to assist people who exhibit these challenging behaviors to improve their daily function within their home, within the school setting, within their workplace, and in community environments. The services that we provide are behavioral assessments, behavior plans, behavior consultation, and brief support implementation services, and I'm going to go through each one of those in a moment. I wanted to let you know that historically these services were provided through a contract within each region, and that's the way it had been for many, many years. And in 2018, with the renewal of the Community Pathways Waiver, as well as the introduction of Community Supports Waiver and Family Supports Waiver, the BSS services became a waiver service, which means that this allows any provider that's approved to provide behavior support services, they can do so. And what this does is it just allows more flexibility and various ways to provide these services to the individuals that we serve. To be able to provide behavior support services, the agency would need to have a qualified clinician, and that qualified clinician would be a person that is licensed within the state of Maryland as either a psychologist, a psychology associate who's under the supervision of a Maryland licensed psychologist, a licensed certified social worker, licensed certified professional counselor, or a licensed behavior analyst. BSS providers, so these qualified clinicians, must have experience with working with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as having competency in a variety of areas that are related to behavioral assessment and strategies to reduce behaviors and eliminate the challenging behaviors. With one of the other services that I'll be speaking about are called brief support implementation services, and the staff that are providing these services, they must be at least 18 years old. They must at least have a high school diploma or equivalent or a higher degree, and they must successfully complete a 40-hour behavior technician training from an approved training source. And that's really important because that's where they're getting that specialized training to be able to provide that implementation service. And they also must receive ongoing supervision by that qualified clinician who meets the criteria that I just said about being able to provide behavioral assessments and behavioral consultation. So what is a behavior assessment? So behavior assessment is something that we use to identify a person's challenging behavior. We also look to see if there might be any co-occurring mental health issues that might be contributing to those behaviors. And this is done by collecting and reviewing relevant data. So there's a thorough records review that should be done. That qualified clinician should be interviewing that person, as well as the people that are important to that person, such as their parents, other caregivers, vocational staff, advocates, whomever is part of that person's life. We also look at medical assessments, including past and current medications, and then also we do on-site observation of interactions with that person in multiple settings. It may be with their caregivers within the home, it may be in their vocational setting with the vocational staff, it may be out within the community, but we take these observations so we can see what's going on and help identify what those challenging behaviors are. To be able to get an assessment, get approval for an assessment, there needs to be a documented history of these behaviors that are showing difficulties within the home or the community, such as maybe there's a past behavior plan that was used maybe in the residential placement or within their home, and now they're having problems vocationally. Or maybe they had a functional behavior assessment when they were in school because they needed to have a behavior plan in school, and that would be documentation to show us that, yes, there's a pattern of this type of behavior. Or that person may have had an event that's impacting their well-being, such as a death within the family that could cause behavior acting out, as well as severe physical or emotional trauma, and also maybe some new emerging behaviors of unknown origin, like we don't know what happened, but all of a sudden this person is acting completely different than the way they normally do, and they're showing some challenging behaviors now all of a sudden, and we need to figure what might be going on. And it's also important to be authorized that the person has exhausted all appropriate and available services through Maryland's Medicaid plan, the Division of Rehabilitation Services, the State Department of Education, and the Department of Human Services, based off of what's been going on in their past. If, for instance, with the State Department of Education, they've already, they're over 21, they're out of school, so that service is no longer available for them. People that receive community and living enhanced support services cannot receive a behavior assessment. And the limitation is that only one behavior assessment is authorized every 12-month period unless the quality of the assessment that was done prior do not meet our standards at DDA. So then after you have an assessment, you may or may not get a behavior plan. So a behavior plan it's kind of like a prescription of specific behavioral and other interventions tailored to the needs and the behavioral data of that particular person. And it's kind of a prescription because it's really like a list of specific interventions that are going to be used when this person is demonstrating this challenging behavior, how staff and family are going to interact with that person so that we can try to decrease that challenging behavior. It also helps to coordinate efforts with caregivers or staff to involve when implementing the plan. If we have something written down where everybody's doing the same thing, responding the same way to a behavior, we're going to see a better result. And like I said, each plan is individualized for that specific person. No two behavior plans should be the same. If you have two people in a setting that both have behavior plans, some of the interventions may be the same because they're like that universal level, that tier 1 that I referred to earlier, but that tier 3 where the behavior plan actually happens, those interventions should be specific to that person and what their team feels is the function of their behavior. So authorization for a behavior plan, it will be authorized at the same time as the behavior assessment, but it's only going to get reimbursed if that assessment says, yes, there is a need for this plan. It also has to have recommendations of positive behavioral supports and implementation based off of DDA requirements. The service limitation of this as well is that it's only one plan a year or within a 12-month period, unless, once again, the quality of that plan does not meet DDA standards. So what are the DDA requirements for behavior plans? Well, first of all, that interdisciplinary team, that team of individuals that are there to work and support that person, they meet and they must agree to the recommendations of the behavior assessment to develop that plan. So the assessment's going to say, this is what we're seeing and this is what we're recommending, and the whole team has to agree to that. That behavior plan also must be written in a person-centered, trauma-informed way, taking into account positive behavior supports as well as strengths-based language. It should include the identification of the challenging behaviors, what we think the function of those behaviors are, what we're going to do proactively to keep these behaviors from happening, and then if there needs to be a reactive strategy, if needed, that's put in. But we always start with proactive, preventative, positive intervention prior to how are we going to react if somebody is becoming unsafe. And then you have behavior consultation. Behavior consultation, like I said, is performed by a qualified clinician who oversees and monitors and modifies that behavior plan. So that qualified clinician is going to do the assessment, they're going to write that plan, and then they're going to monitor it while seeing how these interventions are working, and modify and tweak if needed, because the behavior plan is really a working document. It's not going to be if A happens B all the time. It may need to be tweaked a little bit based off of what we're seeing when we look at how these interventions are playing out. Consultation initially should be done on a monthly basis. It might need more if needed. If you have somebody that's really having a lot of challenging behaviors, that qualified clinician may be called upon a bit more frequently than once a month. Consultation is when we review data. We look at the data collection sheets that might be being done. We're talking with the caregivers and staff about their observations, what they're seeing, what interventions they see are working, what interventions they're saying, yeah, this really isn't as effective as we thought it was going to be, and as well as talking with the individual if possible to see how they feel things are going, because we want their opinion. We want to know if they think that this is motivating for them, or how they're feeling with it all. And then the behavior plan is adjusted based off of the data that we collect and how that individual is responding to the plan. Like I said, this is a living, breathing document. It should be updated and monitored on a pretty frequent basis. The requirements are that the consultation is based on the assessed needs and supported data, plan implementation, and authorized from DDA. And the need for consultation will be related to what it's used for is staff training, oversight and monitoring of that plan implementation, and may be authorized as specified in the plan. So consultation is really important for that staff training aspect, because a lot of times, the individuals that are working with this person, they need a little guidance, they need tools to help, be able to implement the plan in the way that the qualified clinician has envisioned it to be. Also, if consultation is not specified in the plan, then there needs to be additional documentation to support that request. And it could be that person, we didn't put behavioral consultation in, but that person's not demonstrating progress, or the plan's no longer effective due to a change in the needs of that person. Once again, I said that the monitoring of this plan should occur at least monthly for the first 6 months. More so if needed, just based on that individual and their needs, and then quarterly after the first 6 months. But once again, if you have a very intensive behavioral issue going on, it may be after that first 6 months, and maybe that it's more done on a monthly basis. It really, like I said, it's individualized for that individual person, so the consultation time is also going to be individualized as well. Behavior support implementation services are a time-limited service that's provided to directly assist and model to families, agency staff, and caregivers so they can then independently implement the behavior plan. So what happens is we write up this behavior plan, we do training to staff and to families, and then the behavior clinician steps away, and these individuals, the staff, the families, they're trying to implement this plan. And it may be that they're recognizing that, okay, we're implementing this, but I don't feel like we're doing it so effectively enough. And that's when BSIS services would be able to come in and literally provide that modeling and say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is what you need to say. This is, how much time you should wait to get a response or an answer, etc. So that BSIS staff are required to be on site with that caregiver in order to model the implementation of the strategy. So they can't just do a phone call or do FaceTime or Skype. I mean, they need to be wherever the implementation needs to happen, whether it's in the work site, whether it's in the family home, whether it's in the group home. That's where they need to be. The staff must be at least 18 years old and complete those 40 hours of registered behavior tech training, because that, like I was saying about that behavior technician training, that's where they get a lot of that knowledge base that they're going to need to be able to then share with families and staff. The authorization requirements, these service hours are based off of assessed needs, the supporting data, plan implementation, and being authorized by DDA. The person must have a formal behavior plan per DDA requirements, which we've already discussed, and there's a documented need for additional on-site execution and modeling of identified behavior support strategies. It's also important to realize that these services cannot duplicate other services being provided, like one-on-one supports. So basically what this means is that if you have an individual that's on a one-to-one, then that person that's providing that BSIS service is going to come in and probably be working with that person's one-to-one, showing them the different skill or implementation of that intervention. But then that person, that BSIS person, is going to leave. They're not going to stay there for the whole 8-hour shift that that person's working with that individual. They may be in there for an hour or 2 hours to be able to say, okay, I'm going to show you how to do this. Now I'm going to watch and see how you're doing it to help correct if need be. But they're not to take that place of that 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 or however many people are working with that person. It is not to duplicate any other services. So training. So what type of training should direct support professional staff have to implement a behavior plan? Staff that provide behavior support services, so that would be any direct care professional, before being assigned independent duties, before they're assigned as ratio within the program, they need to receive training on principles of behavioral change, as well as appropriate methods to preventing and managing challenge behaviors. These two areas are covered within the MANT system training that occurs at this time of hire. And the MANT system is our Maryland State approved behavioral support program. How often do the direct support professional staff have to take these trainings? All direct support staff must complete DDA approved trainings to meet specific needs of individuals they serve within a 3-month period of their employment date to work, to be able to work with the people within their agency. Recertification for the MANT system, as well as all other DDA approved trainings, need to occur on a yearly basis. This is the contact information that I'm sure many of you've seen with Patricia and Rhonda's emails, but my email is up there as well. If any of you have specific questions about your a person that your individual, or if you're from an agency, please feel free to email me. My job is to help support everybody that is looking at and needing behavior support services, and I'm always available via email. I try to get back to people within a 24 to 48 hour period. So do we have any questions?
Yes, and I apologize to everyone. We jumped in way early today, at least 5 to 7 minutes early, and I apologize, but um, thank you for bearing with us. Okay, we have a few questions. What is the
Okay.
process for an individual who is initially receiving DDA-funded adult services, transitioning youth, who has just left school and has a current behavior plan?
Is the behavior plan through the school setting? So if the plan is, well, either way, whether the current plan that they have is, if they're transitioning age youth, then it's probably through the school setting. It's probably through MSDE. So what they would need to do is contact their regional office and request to speak with the individual that is overseeing behavior support services to get a little more information. But basically what would happen is at their yearly plan, meeting, you could request the BSS services at that time, provide the documentation like the current behavior plan from the school setting, as well as any other data that maybe the school could provide. If there's a BCBA or whoever wrote the behavior plan in the school setting could maybe even write like a recommendation of, hey, this is what we've been doing, and we really feel that we're able to help this individual with the transition, this needs to continue, et cetera, and bring that to their meeting, and then they would go from there. They would take that documentation, they would look at, what the current plan looks like, and then depending on who that person or their team wants to choose to be their BSS provider, then that process would start at that point.
Okay. We have another question. What supports are available for the 18 to 21 population? It seems some DDA funding does not begin until age 21.
Well, I know that we have the family supports waiver, as well as the community supports waiver. And even, so basically, like I said, from 18 to 21, as long as they need to have exhausted anything through the Maryland State Plan, DOORS, MSDE, and if that's all happened, then if they're eligible and are in the family supports waiver, they can request BSS services because it's in all three waivers. If there's, like I said before, if it's a specific issue that you're having for your transitioning aged youth, feel free to email me and I can reach out to our Director of Children's Services and, we can work together to see what's going on to help you get what services you need.
My child is in residential and day. How do parents get MANT training?
Well, that's a great question. So if you want MANT training yourself, you can go to the MANT website, which is MANT, M-A-N-D-T dot, I think it's MANT.system.com.
Yes.
And okay.
MANT
and
system.
they have MANTsystem.com. Yeah, you would know that, Donna. They would have a list of trainings that they have that, you know what, as I'm saying that, I'm just remembering a conversation that I had with the Deputy Secretary that I need to follow up on. But my understanding is that MANT provided for a group of individuals, and this is what I need to follow up on. They provided an orientation type of training for parents. So whoever asked that question, please email me because I have reached out to my contact at MANT to find out more about that so that I can see how we can, bring that into Maryland more. What I was going to say initially was that you could sign up to go to a MANT training, and that's a 4-day training though, and that's, that's pretty intensive. But if whoever sent that question, please send me an email so that I can get you the, because like I said, I do think they've already provided that once here in Maryland, but I was unaware of it. So I have reached out to find out like, hey, what's this about, and is this a resource that we can provide, to other family members?
Okay. My son is in the self-directed service model. Are there clinicians who can recommend strategies to help people with eating disorders?
Well, I mean, it would really depend on if that individual is diagnosed with an eating disorder, if it's like Prader-Willi or, there's a variety of different disorders that are out there. There are specific reasons for why that's happening. The clinicians that we have may have that knowledge base, but if it's an eating disorder issue, you may need to looking into one of the hospital centers for eating disorders to get some more information to be able to navigate how to handle that. I would need to know what the eating disorder was, if it was like Prader-Willi versus bulimia versus anorexia, that the treatments are going to be different.
Okay. What are going to be the supervision requirements for the behavior techs?
The supervision requirements is that they need to meet monthly with the qualified clinicians. So they would need to meet on a monthly basis. It could be individual supervision or it could be group, and that clinician would need to make notes, like supervision notes, saying this is what we discussed. This is the areas of concern or the frustrations or the techniques that needed to be, reviewed, et cetera, so that there's documentation that supervision actually occurred. But yeah, it would be like on a monthly basis. And that's based off of each provider, how they want to do that. If they want it to be like, okay, we're going to do a group or we're going to do an individual or we're going to have 3 people, like it really will depend on the provider as to how they want that supervision to occur, but it should be done on a monthly basis and documented.
Okay. How do persons self-directing services get behavioral support services?
They would go through the regional office, and their person that is assisting with the self-directed, unless it's that person themselves, they would reach out to the regional office and make that request and find out exactly what documentation, et cetera, that they would need to be able to look into getting approval for that.
Okay, great. Can our DSP still get MANT training even if hired a year ago?
If you have DSPs, all DSPs need to be trained in MANT by 2020, July of 2020. And all the DDA providers have trainers. We have 350 trainers within the state of Maryland, and they should be transitioning everybody to MANT. And what that timeline looks like is really based off of the agency that you're working with, because every agency's implementation is going to be different. If the staff person of the DSP was hired a year ago, probably at their yearly renewal of when they would have gotten BPS, that yearly renewal time would probably be when they get transitioned to learning the MANT. But once again, it really is going to it's determined by the agency that they work for as to when they're going to get the MANT training. But all DSPs must be trained by July of 2020.
Okay, what is the registered behavior tech training? Is that the same as MANT or getting a MANT trainer?
No. Registered behavior tech training is specific training in regards to behavior analysis and behavior strategies and interventions. There are a few, I've reviewed several different training sites. Relias is a training site that is approved to do the RBT training. The Florida Institute of Technology is another, and it's all online, that's done. But MANT is more about behavior support, and it really focuses on developing relationship and looking at a person through a trauma-informed lens, and really emphasizing positive support, and person-centered planning. So it's really about developing a relationship with somebody so that they feel safe. And their mantra is, in this place with these people, I feel safe. And if you have a relationship with somebody and you feel safe and you feel like they give you positive regard and you can give it back to them, that's really what MANT is about. The behavior tech training is more about the, when you're reading a behavior plan, looking at how you're going to take the data, how you're observing behavior to see where the interventions are making a change or not. So MANT is more about developing that relationship, and that's why it's a universal. That would be that tier 1, that universal use for everybody. MANT, everybody gets MANT. Everybody deserves to have relationships with people and feel safe, right? So that's across the board. So that's one level of what we're doing. The registered behavior tech training is for that few people that need that behavior plan, how to make sure that the interventions are being used in the way that they've been written in the plan.
For the new BSS, providers and CCSs are confused because CMRO reviewers do not all approve consistently. One person at CMRO will say we need more details and the other will contradict it. So how do we know what the team needs to request to get the correct services?
Great question, because the people that are providing that approval, and I know within CMRO there's been some turnover changing. So some of that is making sure that the regional offices have the requirements that I just spoke to you all about, making sure they're all on the same page. So if that question came from a CCS, if you could email me and give me more specifics about what you're seeing, then I can then help with educating and supporting the staff that are approving BSS services, so that it does become a little more consistent, and then making sure that that's happening across all 4 regions.
Great. How will the plan's annual time limit be met when the development of the plan is delayed beyond a calendar year? Will the plan's annual time frame begin again?
So what you're asking is if the plan is being delayed in the development.
Yeah, past a calendar year.
Past a calendar year. The date of the plan, in theory, and I'll want to make sure, this is coming from me, so I want to make sure that all the regions are in agreement with me on this, but the date of the plan would be, so if you had are you talking about in regards to the date of the plan versus when their annual plan is? So if their annual plan is June 1st, but then this behavior plan isn't done until September 15th, it's out of that calendar year. It should be what the date of the plan is. So if the behavior plan, so if September 15th, 2019 is when it gets developed and you get it, then it should be September 14th, 2020 that it would need to be revamped. But I want to confer with the regions on that, because that's what makes sense to me, but I know that the annual yearly review of that annual individual plan causes some of that glitch, because it typically that's when it's done, is at the annual.
There's an IP year and then there's a behavior plan year. Is that
yeah, but because so what happens, so this is why I want to get more information, and so once again I'm going to say back, please email me so that I can specifically give you that information. But what happens is that, let's say you have somebody that has their IP and they've been doing great and fine and they haven't had a behavior, right? But then all of a sudden something happens and there's a death in the family 6 months later or 5 months later, or they're in a car accident, or something happens, and all of a sudden now they're demonstrating these behaviors because of an instant, something that's occurred after their IP year. You're not going to wait until that year to try to do implementation and help these individuals deal with whatever is going on. However, with that being said, I know that there are a lot of requirements to go with that IP year date, so that's where with the behavior plan and assessment, it can't always be a nice, neat package with the day of the individual plan, because if something happens 6 months later, you're not going to wait another 6 months to intervene.
Okay, we have another question. BSS was approved per MSFP on award letter shows to renew on the PCP date, but on PCIS2 shows that is ongoing. Do we need to submit another MSFP to renew or renew via PCP on LTSS? Ooh, acronyms.
Wow, that was a lot of alphabet. Well, if your letter has one thing stated, but PCIS2 is saying something different, I would call the finance person in your region to confer what you need to do. I don't want to tell you, no, everything's fine, and then you be hit with we need another, MSR. Double check with that. I think if you've got the award letter saying that's what it is, then that's what it is. PCIS2, we're in the midst of switching over to LTSS. So confer with the financial department from your region as to what you should be doing. I mean, I think you're fine with the letter, but I'm not the person that does finances.
According to COMAR, behavioral services in Maryland have to be provided or supervised by someone who is an LBA, licensed behavior analyst, licensed by the state of Maryland. This is different than a psychology license or other licenses mentioned in this presentation. Has an exception been made for individuals receiving behavioral services through the DDA to allow these other professionals to provide behavioral services?
Donna, my phone was ringing at the same time that you started. When you started that question, could you just repeat it for me, please?
Sure. According to COMAR, behavioral services in Maryland have to be provided or supervised by someone who is an LBA, licensed behavior analyst, licensed by the state of Maryland. This is different than a psychology license or other licenses mentioned in this presentation. Has an exception been made for individuals receiving behavioral services through the DDA to allow these other professionals to provide behavioral services?
Based off of what I've looked at, and and speaking with the Deputy Secretary, what I stated is what we're doing. I know COMAR, we are looking at all of COMAR regs right now, and based off of what we have in the waiver, this is where we've settled at this point in time. I do believe I know which COMAR that you're speaking about, and I'm actually going to pull it up just so that I can look at it to make sure that I'm not. I've been looking at a lot of COMAR lately, so I want to make sure that I'm not looking at a different one. So, while I'm looking that up, Donna, is there another question?
We can always do a follow-up Q&A page if that helps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would probably be beneficial.
Yeah, we can tie up some loose ends that way. Yeah.
I would. Yeah, that way, because I know I keep telling everybody, please email me. I think that would be probably the best way of doing it. That way, I'll get all the questions. We can read. I type it all up, and then it's out there for everybody, even those people that were a part of the webinar. And then we would have that for future reference. That I think is a great idea.
Yeah. Okay. Are the behavior plans going to be reauthorized annually, or after the initial? Is it just part of the behavioral consultation?
Unless the behavior plan, the quality of that behavior plan does not meet DDA requirements, or if somebody has a major life-altering event, that a new behavior plan would need to be written because we're seeing different behaviors coming about. It would basically follow under consultation, and the reason for that is if you have a plan And like I said, that behavior plan is a living document, so it's constantly changing if need be. It may be that for 2 quarters, for 6 months, that individual is doing fine and great, and then, you know, now we're at Christmas or winter time, and they've got a cyclical issue that happens, and based off of knowledge of that person, you know, every 6 months, you know, this is what happens, then you might need to tweak it. It doesn't necessarily mean a new plan needs to be developed, but let's say that, you know, it's that cyclical time of year, but then something significant has happened, or, you know, let's say they change behavior, CSS providers, and, you know, during the time of that transition, that person ends up in the hospital for a psychiatric issue. I'm just making an example. And the new provider, you know, they're like, well, you know, we're not quite sure. It's really a case-by-case thing. So if there's a reason why somebody wants a new behavior plan or a new behavior assessment, that would basically come to me and give me the rationale behind it, and then I would confer with the regional directors and make that decision of if a new plan can be authorized or a new assessment. But basically, behavior consultation really is how that behavior plan continues to change and morph over time.
Is the BSS provider, such as Humanum, responsible for completing the MSFPs for the behavior plans?
The modified service plans, that would be done through their CCS. Humanum is a behavior provider. They're providing the service, and they're being contracted by that agency or individual, so they would not be providing that.
Okay. Who is responsible for monitoring the behavior plan for the first 6 months?
The qualified clinician through behavior consultation.
Does the BSS fund direct care staff that provide behavior support, or is it solely the consultation in BSIS?
It would be BSIS and behavior consultation. So your direct support staff that you have scheduled to work that shift would be implementing behavior plan. BSIS would be used if there was documentation needed to show that you need that brief support implementation, and that would be a different person that would be coming in.
Okay. Somebody wanted to know when this webinar series would be on the DDA website. I can tell you that it's been a delay. We've had some changeover in IT staff, so we're hoping to get it up as soon as possible, so bear with us. In the meantime, if you want to email me, donna.will@maryland.gov, I'd be happy to send you a link. Okay. Does the requirement for MANT training for DSPs, direct support professionals, by 2020 also apply to direct support professionals and self-directed?
Yes. Anybody that is working with an individual that has DDA services or need to be trained in MANT.
Okay. How can a licensed Office of Healthcare Quality provider with MSDE policies and procedures approval serve individuals with intellectual disabilities as an agency with ability to support DDA individuals but unlicensed by OHCQ?
That's going to be a question that I'm going to table to talk to Patricia Sestoki about, because I don't have an answer, to be quite transparent with you. It would be something that I would want to talk with her about.
Are the agency completing the modified service plans of the actual BSS provider? Oh wait, I think we covered that.
Yep. All right, I'm hearing a doorbell or something.
That's my phone.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what that was.
Sorry about that. My understanding is that the behavior plan renewal corresponds with the date of the approval by the QA or standing committee of the agency. Is that so?
Yes, because it has to be approved by the standing committee, especially if there's any rights violations in there. So that would actually be when it would be implemented, once it's approved by them.
Okay. When is the switchover from PCIS2 to LTSS?
I cannot answer that for you. I do not know, because I know that we have been working very hard and furious to fix some of the issues that have been going on. I know that they're looking at potentially doing another run, so I don't have the answer to that.
What is the maximum?
That would be another Patricia question.
Okay, we'll follow up. What is the maximum amount of BSS hours needed for transitioning youth?
The waiver states that behavior consultation can go up to 8 hours a day. Behavior consultation, my understanding is we've changed with Amendment 1, we've changed it to a 15-minute interval, so it doesn't have to be 1 hour behavior consultation. It can be 15 minutes at a time, but the maximum is 8 hours a day. And same thing with BSIS services. The assessment and the plan are milestone payments, so there's just the $1 amount. So I don't really, the maximum of hours would really depend on the individual, the intensity of their behaviors, and the documentation to support that number. So it couldn't be more than 8 hours a day for 365 days. But if you were requesting that much amount, there would need to be substantial documentation to show that that much is needed.
Is the CCS responsible for writing the behavior plan or the BSS provider? We are a residential provider, and CCS are requesting that we write the MSFPR for BSS, but we are not rendering the BSS service or billing for it. So we thought the BSS.
All right, so your CCS is not going to be writing a behavior plan. The behavior support, the approved behavior support provider, whoever is providing BSS services, okay, they're the ones that qualified clinician is going to write the behavior plan. They're the only one that can write the behavior plan, is a qualified clinician. That agency who's providing BSS service are going to be the ones that are billing for it because they want to get paid.
Okay. If DSPs are required to be MANT certified by 7/2020, who will pay for that training when an individual self-directs? We don't have money in the budget for this.
Well, because they're hiring other individuals to work for them that may or may not be a part of an agency. I'm just talking out loud to myself as I'm trying to answer this for you. That's a great question. Let me research that a little bit. That's a great question. And most of the focus that I've been doing with the MANT training has been with providing agencies, not so much with self-directed. So I apologize that I don't have as much innate knowledge in regards to that. So let me look into that. And as Donna said, we'll be posting this all on a question and answer follow-up. But you can also, like I said before, email me directly so that I can give you that information sooner rather than later, because I'm going to need to look into that a little bit.
Okay, we'll table all the self-directed questions until we get more information. Okay, will BSIS remain that the providers just have to take the 40-hour course, or will it be moved towards becoming certified RBTs?
No, it is just going to be that if a providing agency, a BSS providing agency wants to offer BSIS service, is just taking that 40-hour training and providing the supervision through one of the qualified clinicians. The RBT training we wanted to keep that RBT training because it's very specific, and it gives those individuals tools in their toolbox to be able to do this type of work. To become a registered behavior tech, you would need to take a test to get certified, and you would also need to be supervised by a BCBA because it is more in that behavior analysis ABA streamline. What we're doing is, with the RBT training, is to provide the knowledge, and not every providing agency has a BCBA that can supervise. So that's why we're just having them take the classes to become knowledgeable to be able to provide that service. But now, if you're a providing agency and you have BCBAs and you want your people that are doing BSIS services to get that RBT, that Registered Behavior Tech, that is an agency, that's your decision. What we're requiring is that at the minimum, BSIS services will have that, those individuals will have that training and be supervised by a clinician. They are not then certified with the RBT. They've just taken the class.
Are the approved hours of consultation for 1 year from the effective date on the award letter?
Yes.
And what are the billing increments, 15 minutes or hourly?
Initially, in the waiver, it was hourly. However, with the first amendment that we did, there were several individuals that had suggested 15-minute increments, and we discussed it and looked at best practices and decided that that made sense. So with Amendment 1, it is a 15-minute interval.
Okay, does the approved BSS provider write the MSFPR to initiate the consultation? I think we went over that.
Yes.
Modified, okay. I have a client who has a behavioral plan and no one has ever come in to do any evaluations. Who schedules that?
I would call whoever is doing the BSS services and speak with the clinician that's on that behavior plan and say, hey, when are you coming out? Because whoever's name is on that behavior plan is responsible for that behavior plan. And if they have not come out to do any kind of consultation, then you need to call them up and be like, hey, when are you coming out? Because you need to do this part of the service.
Somebody wanted to know, when was the effective date for the 15 minutes of BCS? I am a provider of BSS services and was not aware of the change.
For BSIS, that was in the waiver, the initial waiver, is my understanding. For consultation, behavioral consultation, that just happened with the First Amendment that is currently in approval.
She clarified, not BSIS, it was for the consultation.
Consultation. All right. So the Amendment 1 has gone in for approval. Okay. We have requested that it be changed to 15 minutes. So when that's approved and sent out to for everybody to know about, then that's when that'll happen. I don't know if it already has.
We have one last question. When will providers receive payment?
That is a question you'll have to ask your regional financial office. I do not know. I'm not.
Oh, one more. Where will the QA that Dr. DePasquale will be answering offline be posted? I think we can do that in an email or
with the constant contact.
Yeah.
And also too, I'll talk with Patricia, but with the transformational updates, I could probably attach it to that as well too. But I'll double check with her to make sure that's the appropriate place for it to go.
Okay. Alrighty.
So I think if we can put it in a couple different places, Don, I think that would be good.
Yeah, that would be.
Okay.
I do not see any more questions. I can give it another second if anyone else has any other questions outside of the self-directed type of questions. All right, it's I don't see any more questions coming in, so do you have any last thoughts?
Thank you guys for all the great questions. Some of them definitely have given me pause to think, and the information that I don't know, I will definitely find out and communicate out to everybody. I want everybody to have the most accurate and consistently messaged information. So thank you so much for your time and attention and attendance. And once again, as you're pondering and thinking about all of these things that we've talked about, if you have questions, like I said, I'm more than happy to answer anything. If I don't know the information, I will get it to you. That's it. Everybody have a great day.
We're going to end the webinar. Thank you for coming.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.